Practices for Mathematical Literacy. My name is Sharon Ramsey. I'm a math consultant at Wayne Risa, and we are so happy that you all took time out of your busy schedules to join us today. So this particular session is sponsored by our Literacy Network, our Literacy Learning Network, and working together with our Wayne Risa math team. Just a little introduction to all of our math consultants. There are 5 of us: Dr. Christy Hamby, David Sward, Sherry Zub, and Sonia Malik. Once again, myself, I'm Sharon Ramsey, and we welcome you. Thank you so much. So we're just going to jump right in. We are honored today to have with us Dr. Julia Aguirre. Dr. Aguirre is a professor of education at the University of Washington, Tacoma. Her research interests include equity studies in mathematics education, teacher education, and culturally responsive mathematics pedagogy. She has worked in the field of mathematics for over 20 years. She has taught mathematics in formal as well as informal classroom settings. A primary goal of her work is preparing new generations of teachers to make mathematics education accessible, meaningful, and relevant to today's youth. She is the co-author of the NCTM book, The Impact of Identity in K-8 Mathematics, Rethinking Practices. She is also co-editor of the book, Transforming Mathematics Teacher Education, an Equity-Based Approach. So I present to you Dr. Julia Aguirre. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, or I think it's getting into your late afternoon. Greetings from the state of Washington, and very excited to be here with all of you. Thank you for coming. I know this is probably the end of a busy day for you, so I will try to make this an enjoyable experience. What I'd like to do is just get a sense of who's in the room. So if you could just give me a quick indicator of whether you are working in an elementary setting, that would be really helpful for me. So you can either use your reactions buttons down below, or if you have a hand raise option, that would be great. Just give me a sense of who is elementary folks. Excellent, thank you. How about middle school? Middle school?
I'm trying to use my screen, but I'm kind of stuck in this weird thing with just my thumbnail here and nothing else. So I'm middle school.
Okay. Sometimes there's a particular view on the very top. It'll say speaker view or gallery view. Great. And any high school folks?
It's a new district computer and it doesn't like me very much. So we're just getting to know each other, and yeah, it's weird, okay. But I'll figure it out.
Okay, great. All right. So, I'm going to share my screen, and there's actually going to be lots of opportunities there's going to be 2 main opportunities for us to work together today in small groups. If Sharon, if you could put the Google Slides presentation slide link into the chat, that would be great. So this particular link that Sharon just put in is to the slides themselves. So you have opportunity to view them with me as we go along. I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll be doing pretty soon we're going to be doing an activity together. We'll put you all in small groups for a breakout session. Okay, so let's see if we can make this all work. And I want to just say I am on this learning journey with you when it comes to working with Zoom and doing all the things that we normally do face to face. It has been a huge challenge for me. So I'm on that learning curve too. So I hope you can grant me some grace and we can work on this together. Today we're going to be talking about, and I was asked to speak on your equity focused leadership series about mathematics literacy. And I am thinking of this from a standpoint of what is your vision to create what I call math strong children and youth. So we're the overview of our time together. We hope to reconnect you to your vision for math strong students, learn about 5 equity-based practices for mathematics that we talk about in the book that you saw earlier, as well as it's been part of the Catalyst for Change documents that have been put out by NCTM. And then refine our work to sustain strong math identities and rehumanizing math experiences in our classrooms. So those are the kinds of things that I hope you will gain from being a part of this talk today. So on slide 3, research has shown that we actually know what works in classrooms. And the attention needs to be placed on 3 basic things: beliefs and structures, curriculum and instruction, and family community engagement. And specific things are around, in terms of beliefs and structures, have to do with high expectations. So research has shown high expectations. Teachers have to have high expectations if their children are going to learn. High quality content matters. So for the sake of argument, we're going to say that whatever standards your state has, if it's a Common Core, for example, we could describe that the mathematical practices and the content standards are, if your curriculum adheres to that, and your instruction adheres to those things, then you have a good shot, high quality content. And then the often not so talked about, but extremely important, is strong relationships between teachers and students, and schools and families and communities. And so for today's talk, I'm going to talk about all 3. Beliefs and structures we'll talk about briefly. Family and community engagement we'll talk about briefly, and then we'll go a little deeper into the curriculum and instruction, because if I had you all day, I would love to do all 3 equally in time, but I don't have that time with you. But I want to kind of give you the layout here. And so I'm going to try to answer things in the chat as I go along, but it might take me a little while for me to get back to the chat. So bear with me there. So these 3 things are like on and I use the 3-legged stool analogy, because a 3-legged stool will not stand well if one of the legs is missing, or if the legs are somehow shorter than one another. It really does matter that they are equally supported, all 3 of them. So in that respect, what I'd like to do is engage in our first activity. A lot of the work that I do around equity and justice in mathematics education, for a long time, whenever I even uttered the word equity or justice in mathematics education, I would automatically see people's defenses go up. The walls would come up immediately after the word equity was somehow came from my mouth. I would see the walls go up. So I have been working on and thinking about ways in which we can engage in sort of common understandings and ways to think about equity and justice in math education. And so one of the things that I have sort of been drawn to are identity linked phrases, or things that makes you think of identities. So I want to ask the group, how many people have heard of the website Live Strong? Live Strong? Anybody? I see a couple folks I have in the chat. Live Strong. Okay. How many have heard of the phrase Boston Strong? Boston Strong. So anybody who knows the term Boston Strong, do you know where that came from? Can you just say it out loud?
Boston.
The bombing at the Boston Marathon?
Yes, the bombing at the Boston Marathon. So the bombing of the Boston Marathon was a horrific event that changed the lives of the people who were there and the city itself. And people rallied around that phrase, Boston Strong. It was written on people's faces. It was put in windows. It was part of an identity. to bounce back from adversity. Live Strong is a website that is designed to help you bounce back and support a healthy well-being. And you get lots of information on there. It was originally developed by Lance Armstrong, or as he was a part of that. No matter how you feel about him, he was a cancer survivor. And that was one of the things that he helped to create, is this website that provides a wealth of information for people to support healthy living. So these things, when we say, and as you know, there's been things like Parkland Strong, Las Vegas Strong, New York City has its own kind of strong, Flint has its own kind of strong. So when you hear that, it's often around a sense of identity and unity. So if I'm gonna ask you this question now. What would you say if I said, if you thought about math strong students and you finish the sentence stem, math strong students are, and I put curious as one thing, what might be another thing you might say? You can say it out loud. Math strong students are risk takers, flexible, questioning.
Because after that,
Okay.
Problem solvers?
Problem solvers. Okay, great. Stop. Time out. Excellent. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to put you in small groups. We're going to give you another link for a set of slides called Math Strong Posters. So in your group, I would like you to pick a slide that maybe corresponds to your breakout number. So your breakout room number, you say, I'm going to breakout room 5. So maybe you'll go to the slide 5. And you will fill out a slide that looks like the one that you're seeing right now, that starts with curious, but you can fill it anything you want. Similar to all you have said here: empowered, fast learner, confident, tenacious. That's what I'd like to see. So I'm going to give your group, go ahead and introduce yourselves to one another, and then create a poster, a Math Strong poster for your group. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes for this. This is like a massive brainstorm. There's no wrong answers. It's just how would you finish that sentence? Math Strong students are, and then finish that sentence. Okay, does everyone understand what I'm asking you to do? So, and then we'll come back in about 5 minutes. All right. All right, I think we're coming back here. Thanks very much. There we go. Here comes everyone else coming back. All right, welcome back, everyone. So what I'd like to do is I'm just going to go through the posters that you created, and I want you to kind of think through as I'm scrolling through, what are common terms that seem to come across the different posters, as well as anything that any phrase or description that resonates with you. And you can put that information in the chat. So something that you see that's common across the different posters, as well as a phrase or something that you thought were super powerful. Okay. So here's breakout group 1, I think was here. And just take a look at the things that folks said: hardworking, problem solvers, flexible, self-motivated, communicators, thinkers, math lovers, all of these things. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next one. Again, tenacious, confidence, perseverant, committed, open to learning, responsive, growth mindset. Lots of different things here. Group 3, joyful, playful, multimodal, creative, risk takers, problem solvers, community oriented, flexible with numbers, lots of different things here, inquisitive. Group 4, you might start seeing some patterns now. Flexible thinkers, deep thinkers, collaborative, inquisitive, resilient. Go ahead and put things that you find powerful in the chat. Tinkering, problem solvers, excellent, great. Here we go. This is group 5. So problem solver, creative, thinker, persevere, make sense, make models, read, draw, write, flexible, ask questions, practice, look for patterns, tend to precision. Okay, here we go. Flexible, patterns, joyous, excellent. Group 6, reason abstractly, boys and girls, explain their thinking, having fun, able to learn from mistakes, follow patterns, have good number sense, asking questions, complete, understand the big ideas, communicators, explorers. Group 7, engaged, resilient, perseverant, make connections to the real world, deliberate, risk takers came up again, able to learn from mistakes, quick to respond, challenges others' answers, eager, able to make sense of a problem. Group 8, problem solver, persistent, strong math sense, confident, logical thinkers. And number 9, again, inquisitive, risk takers, confident, problem solvers, mathematicians, resilient, critical thinkers, big brains, use manipulatives, questioning, love numbers, collaborative, growth mindset, persistent. All right, so you've listed lots of things having to do in the chat, things that came out powerful or that you were identifying as common. So this is a kind of exercise activity that you can do with your colleagues in your schools to sort of get a sense of what it means to be math strong in the setting that you're working in right now. So I offer this as a way for you to bring something back to your professional learning communities and start with that. What do we think is math strong? What is our sort of common vision for that? I'm going to go to the next slide here, or in the back. I'm going to go back to my presentation slides, and I'm going to just show you a few examples. This is from I do this activity the second week of every math methods class I teach, because that's when we start talking about math identity. And so part of this work is for people to really get a sense of what does math strong mean. So these posters are from new teachers, teacher candidates really, who are learning from their mentor teachers in classes already, right? So you can see that they also had very similar descriptions as you did. So, as a math education community, we do really know what math strong students are. So we want to sort of think about, if this is what math strong students are, then what are we doing as math educators to cultivate the learning experiences and the settings in which the children are learning and children and youth are learning, to cultivate this kind of math strong identity. So we usually do it in posters when we're, in larger groups. What I asked the organizers for this talk to do is that you can take those, you can take the posters and put them in a word cloud, and that would be something for your group to have as part of the thinking that went on here with me today, right? So I did this with my math methods classes. And you can again see what really popped out. The bigger the word, the more often it came up, right? So again, very similar to the words that you came up with in a completely different state, in a completely different group of people. All right, so going to slide 7. So this is the first paragraph, part of the first paragraph in the National Councils of Supervisors of Mathematics and a joint statement with Todos, Mathematics for All. These are two important math organizations. They put a joint statement together on mathematics education through the lens of social justice. And so this is part of the first opening paragraph. A social justice stance requires a systemic approach that includes fair and equitable teaching practices, high expectations for all students, access to rich, rigorous, and relevant mathematics, and strong family-community relationships to promote positive mathematics learning and achievement. Equally important, a social justice stance interrogates and challenges the roles of power, privilege, and oppression play in the current unjust system of mathematics education and in society as a whole. This is the challenge and the work of social justice in mathematics education, to do right by our children and move forward together. So just in the chat, if you'd like, real quickly, what stands out, what words or phrases stand out for you in this particular sentence or this particular statement? And of course, there are red marks in here, but you may have a different sort of sense of what phrasing in this particular opening paragraph stands out when you think about a social justice stance for mathematics education. So I'll wait a little bit. High expectations for all students, do right by our children, positive math experiences, high expectations, fair and equitable, interrogates and challenges roles, power, privilege, and oppression, challenges, positive math experiences, relevant mathematics, challenge unjust systems. Good. Okay, thank you for putting those in. So you can certainly have access. It's still, this is again, if you're going back to your professional learning communities, this position statement and there's 4 other ones that were recently developed by Todos to complement and update some of this work that's in the original statement. I encourage you to go to the Todos the Todos website and look up and be a part of that rich math community. They have a lot of things for math educators, teachers that will be supported, particularly around in our dual pandemic of COVID and systemic racism. Okay, so I'm going to slide 8. Mathematics is a civil rights issue. Mathematics literacy and economic and political access are how we are going to give hope to the young generation. The ideas of citizenship now requires not only literacy in reading and writing, but literacy in mathematics and science. And this is a quote from Bob Moses, who's a civil rights leader and founder of the Algebra Project. So I just would like a show of hands. How many have heard of Bob Moses? So one of the things I'd like you to invite you to do is look who he is at some point later on. He is was part of the organization called SNCC. He was people who helped organize Black sharecroppers in the 1960s who were unable to vote because of a literacy test that was given in order for people to vote. And he used the practices of organizing to get folks who were disenfranchised, unable to vote, the right to vote. He used those same principles to help us think through about how algebra can be used. As algebra is used as a gatekeeper. So in the same way that it's not a like a radical thing to do to register people to vote, but it was a radical thing to register Black sharecroppers who were not able to vote. That was a radical idea. And in the same way as focusing on algebra, it's not really a radical thing for people to learn algebra, but it is a radical thing for many students who are unable to have access to or engage and advance in algebra when they're in our schools right now. And so that's why he decided to focus on algebra. He could have probably focused on other domains of mathematics, but he decided that algebra was the place, the really important gateway to the other more advanced mathematics to focus on in his work. So one definition of mathematics literacy is this. Mathematics literacy supports conceptual understanding, critical and computational thinking, quantitative reasoning, the application of technology, intellectual freedom, economic participation, and democratic engagement. So just like reading and writing, it has a huge impact on how we move and the decisions we make, and our participation in the world. Mathematics is also a unique gatekeeper or a wall in our education system. And this is where I want to talk to you a little bit about algebra as a case, right? So one of the important things to think about is that algebra has been sort of this like lightning rod domain in a lot of our debates around mathematics and how much kids should learn and what should they learn. And so one of the things that I want you all to know is that algebra has been a lightning rod for a really long time. And in this, there's a book that Spielhagen wrote, sort of giving the history of algebra in our schooling system. And this is a quote from one of the things that she found. So in 1913, David Sneddon, the commissioner, stated that the study of algebra was useless for all but very small numbers who would use it as a professional tool. In New York City, algebra was attacked for high failure rates and pressures on pupils. Algebra was charged with injuring the mind, destroying the health, and wrecking the lives of children. It was especially dangerous for girls. The superintendent of Los Angeles schools at that time maintained that algebra, quote, caused many a girl to lose her soul. Now we might laugh. That's like pretty old fashioned thinking, right? But you know what? That sort of lingering has really struck home around our own sort of history with algebra in our curriculum setting. So one of the things to think about is that in the late 1900s, early 2000s, the debates continue about access to algebra and who was ready and who was not. And in NCTM, there was a 2000 position statement fueled this debate related to access versus readiness. By advocating algebra for all, but only when ready. And there was no discussion about how would we know if a kid is ready? And how can you be advocating for both readiness and that algebra is for everyone? Later on, there was a lot of concern around and critiques about the Algebra for All movement, where all 8th graders were mandated to take algebra in the 8th grade. There was a lot of districts who were moving toward initiatives, and this is about structures. I just want you to sort of hang in with me here around beliefs and structures. So how what people believe about a particular content area and how they structure that in the way classes and tracks are developed matters here. So there was some concern around the lost algebra students. So students who were put in algebra too early and they were now leaving, they were exiting. And then finally, the Common Core standards and the high school appendix, which is not part of the regular document that people look at, attempted to acknowledge both sides of this debate and then reinforced tracking with 2 pathway options that they gave little guidance to districts about who should go into which pathway. There was the compacted pathway and the general pathway. And the compacted pathway had kids taking algebra by 8th grade. The compacted pathway had kids taking algebra by the 8th grade. The general regular Common Core track had kids taking algebra by 9th grade. So I say this because to date, there have been no studies that find specific groups of people are more cognitively ready than other groups to learn algebra. So there is no algebra gene. There is no studies that show girls somehow mature faster, or white and Asian students mature faster, or Black students don't have it, Latinx don't have it. There's no studies that demonstrate that. There are studies that have shown elementary age children from various cultural, linguistic, racial, socioeconomic backgrounds can and do think algebraically, starting at the elementary level. And some districts are moving to eliminate tracking again with promising results. So most recently, the case that's been people are watching is San Francisco Unified School District. This is their second attempt to detrack. And NCTM has formally endorsed ending systemic tracking, as has the National Supervisor of the Supervisors of Mathematics. So if you don't already know, and the reason why I say this is that because tracking doesn't just start in middle school. It starts earlier than that. And so we want to think about, again, how are our beliefs get structured in the systems that we're working in. So the Catalyst for Change that came out in 2018 made the recommendation that high school mathematics should continue the practice of tracking. Most recently, 2020, the National Council of Supervisors of Mathematics said that we need to stop tracking. As a practice, tracking too often leads to segregation, dead-end pathways, and low-quality experiences, and disproportionately has a negative effect on minority and low socioeconomic students. Additionally, placement into tracks often lacks transparency and accountability. Overall, tracking does not improve achievement, but does increase individual or educational inequality. So, and they're calling for detracked heterogeneous math instruction through early high school. Now, I'm really glad that people are making the statement that tracking needs to be dismantled. I don't think, they're not going as far as I would go. I think tracking in any form leads to negative impacts on children. The one thing that I would say is that I don't know any experience in which kids are ranked and sorted, or which people are ranked and sorted and segregated, that has ended up being beneficial for everybody involved. I don't know any, and that includes the Japanese concentration camps that we had during World War II. That includes Jim Crow laws. That includes the certain detention centers that we have now that separate families and their children. There's no examples in our history in which segregation was a good thing. And so we have to really take that to heart and think about, how are we ranking and sorting children? And how does that impact their identities as math learners? So one person who has studied a lot of this is Jo Boaler. You may know her. She's really a fantastic scholar and math education advocate. And what I appreciate about her work is that she has done some follow-up longitudinal studies of the groups of students she studied in 2 high schools. So when they graduated and are now adults, she's gone back and interviewed them. And the kids that participated in in schools that had ability groups that were fixed, the adults now who experience that as high school students just describe that as psychological imprisonment. And the schools then which the students experienced mixed ability groups described their sort of math learning experiences as intellectual freedom. And so it's clear that from her work that the adult experiences, or how adults felt about their identities and their development and their experiences, were shaped by those school experiences they had as young people. And then in a YouTube video that she asked a group of Colorado teachers, where do fixed mindset messages, where do they come from? And the answer for that was, it comes from tracking. The teacher said it comes from tracking. So here's my ask of you, is to really think about the structures in place that you have that starts to rank and sort children. And in my state, for example, it starts in preschool and kindergarten with readiness tests. And those readiness tests tell you something about the kids, and then assertions are made about what they have and what they don't have. And so you're already engaged in interventions, and they're 5, right? And so we're starting to make judgments, potential judgments that actually will impact their 3rd grade test scores, their 5th grade test scores, their middle school, and their high school. There might be correlations, but there's a whole lot of learning that should be going on in between that time. So what the thing that I need you to understand, and many people I know in this group have probably heard of, and it's been saying in here, is growth mindset and fixed mindset, right? So if you are engaged in tracking right now, tracking is the structural equivalent of a fixed mindset. So it's really important that you understand that. And if you are someone who believes in growth mindset, then you got to change the structures that you're teaching in. So that is part of the talk here about that. I wanted to just give some attention to the beliefs and structures that impact equitable practices for mathematics literacy. The one thing that we've talked about here is mathematics identities. So the tracking impacts how kids feel about themselves as learners. Mathematics identity refers to the dispositions and deeply held beliefs that individuals develop about their ability to participate and perform effectively in math contexts and use mathematics in powerful ways across the context of their lives. So people's mathematics identities are both their own understandings of themselves as math learners and how other people position them as mathematics learners. And this is a negotiation process. Our math identities are constantly being shaped and are dynamic. They're not static. And they're often expressed in stories. So I want to just say, like, as a math educator, and you probably might have experienced this, if you say you're a math teacher and you're on the bus, or, you know, when we used to ride in planes, or, you know, when people found out what you did, more often than not, they would probably tell you their math story. And you would get their own experiences about what it was like to be a math learner. I don't think you get that when you're a history teacher. Math has a really strong impact on how people feel about their experiences in school. People made huge decisions about whether or not they might major in something because of the math involved. And so math plays this kind of role that no other subject matter does in terms of the way we feel about ourselves as math learners and how we actually measure achievement, academic achievement in this country. Math is the one thing that we measure our success by. So this is to kind of set up our understanding of ourselves as teachers, as math educators. All math teachers are identity workers. And this work, I invite you to read Rochelle Gutierrez's work. She's a professor out of University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And she wrote, by virtue of mathematics being political, all mathematics teaching is political. All mathematics teachers are identity workers, whether they consider themselves as such or not. They contribute to the identities students construct, as well as constantly reproduce what mathematics is and how people might relate to it or not. So as math teachers and math educators in our community right here, it's really important that you understand your role, your essential role in developing the math identities of young people. So I want to have you this is a definition. I'm constantly thinking about, a working definition of equity in mathematics. So this is something that appears in our book. All students, in light of their humanity, personal experiences, backgrounds, histories, languages, physical and emotional well-being, must have the opportunity to learn rich mathematics that fosters meaning-making, empowers decision-making, critiques, challenges, and transforms inequities and injustices. Equity demands responsive education that promotes equitable access, attainment, and advancement for all students. So my favorite part of this is all students in light of their humanity. Instead of saying, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their zip code, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of the language that they speak, I wanted to reframe that. So to talk about, in light of all of that, and all of their experiences, all of their humanity, that is what we should be leveraging and recognizing as resources for our classrooms and teaching mathematics. So this is one definition that I feel is distinct from a lot of others, when we lead with in light of humanity rather than regardless of your humanity. That's what we want to lead with, in light of our humanity. Okay. So our book talks about 5 equity-based practices, and these are the 5, and I'll go through them in a quick detail. The first part of the book really talks about what identity is, describes it in relationship to math proficiency, asks you to think about your own math identity as teachers. So you can go through your write your own math autobiography and how you felt as a math learner and now a math educator. And then we talk about, in the middle part of the book, we have described these 5 equity-based practices, and we use 3 chapters to bring some, to illustrate what these 5 equity-based practices are. The first one is going deep with the mathematics. So, this shouldn't be a surprise. We should all, we're math people, right? We're math educators. That's what we do. And so, yes, equity-based practices demands that we go deep with the mathematics. It's not separate. It is a part of it. So that means giving high cognitive demand tasks, demonstration of multiple strategies and representations, and involves analysis and justification. That's all a part of going deep. The thing about it is that there are curriculums out there. There are classes that are being taught by 2 particular groups of children who never get the opportunity to engage and go deep with mathematics because they're stuck on very skill-based, drill-based types of curriculum that doesn't promote any of these high cognitive demand skills. The second equity-based practice is called leveraging multiple competencies. So here, collaborative learning, that a lot of you said were part of being math strong, is to be collaborative, that utilizes various math knowledge to solve complex problems. Tasks have multiple entry points, and assessment, content knowledge, and math practices such as these math practices such as examining patterns, generalizing, abstracting, making comparisons, and specifying conditions. So kids bring in different competencies, and we want to be able to develop these multiple competencies. So students should get the opportunity to learn to generalize, to abstract, to make comparisons, and have tasks that allow them to entry into those tasks, into those high cognitive demand tasks, no matter wherever their backgrounds are, whatever their competencies are at the time. Affirming mathematical learner identities. For this is designed to promote persistence and reasoning with complex problems and solving tasks, validate math knowledge and experiences as math learners, and focus feedback on mathematical ideas and strategies. So we want the feedback to be engaged, whether the answer is correct or incorrect, or partially correct, right? We want the strategies to be, and feedback to help students become productive, as well as how do we support unproductive strategies? How do we get them to be more productive? And we want that feedback to not just focus on mistakes or errors that they make. So this is all about affirming mathematical learners' identities. The fourth one is challenging spaces of marginality. So challenging spaces of marginality positions students as mathematical resources. That is a given. It distributes math authority as interconnected among students, teacher, and text. So everyone is involved in creating and communicating mathematical ideas. And that when you challenge spaces of marginality, you're encouraging student-to-student interactions. So when you think about your classrooms, in what ways are you bringing people from the margins, bringing kids from the margins in? And the last one is drawing on multiple resources of knowledge. And that includes math knowledge, cultural knowledge, language knowledge, family and community knowledge. So these practices include tasks that involve stories or situations to solve or represent a problem. Previous knowledge is a bridge to new learning. It taps math knowledge and experiences related to students' culture, community, family, and history as resources. It recognizes the strengths and multiple language forms that children bring, particularly children who are emerging bilinguals or speak 2, 3, or 4 different languages. And it affirms and supports multilingualism. Okay, so I know I went by fast with these 5 equity-based practices, but I hope you get a chance to dig deep a little later when you look back at these slides and think about how your practices support going deep, support leveraging multiple mathematical competencies, support affirming mathematical identities, support challenging the spaces of marginality, and support drawing on multiple resources of knowledge. How do your instructional practices do those things? So I'm just looking at time real quickly now. So what I thought I would do is have us do a little task together. And this is a task called The Case of Poppy's Birthday. And it's a mathematizing fairness task. So the first thing that I want to ask you, and you can put in the chat, is when I say fair share, and can you type in the chat what math ideas come up for you when we talk about fair sharing? From a math standpoint, like, okay, I see fractions, equal, division, fractions. Someone says allowing everyone to speak and share ideas, fractions, same amount, arrays, sharing equally. Okay, division of fractions, great. Okay, how about from a social standpoint? What is a fair share? What does fair share mean from a social standpoint? When have you heard of that? Or have you ever been in a situation where you had to figure out a fair share from a social standpoint? So everyone gets what they need, equal rights, given what's deserved, same amount, equity, equal pay, equity, okay? Enough, equality, gets what's needed, equity, great. Thank you very much. Reparations, okay. Socialism, okay. So a social standpoint from a fair sharing can connect to some of these ideas around what people might describe as socialism or reparations, watching out for each other, getting what's needed. All right, so I'm going to present to you a task, and I want, we're going to be back in our groups, and you're going to use the next, let's say, I'm going to give you about 10, 15 minutes just to get started on the task a little bit, okay? So here's the task. Actually, I'm going to have someone else read it. Could someone be a volunteer and read this for me? Valerie, you look like you might do it. Nicole might do it. Got to have a volunteer. My voice is getting a little cracky.
It was Senior Aguirre's 70th birthday. His 3 children wanted to throw him a big party to celebrate. The hall rental, mariachi, food, and decorations will cost a total of $4,500. The brother, a special medical doctor, anesthesiologist, who makes about $20,000 per month, suggested that the 3 children split the cost equally. One of the sisters, a university professor, who makes about $6,000 per month, said it would not be fair. She suggested the following: The brother pays $3,150. She would pay $900, and the other sister, a partner in the family business and single mom of 2 boys who makes about $3,000 per month, should pay $450.
Okay, so that's the situation. So in your groups, your job is the following. You're going to write a position statement using mathematical evidence to support your conclusion to the following questions. Which person do you agree with and why? What is fair in this situation? Can you think of an alternative financial arrangement that might be more fair? And I'd like you to, if possible, to come up with a representation, a visual representation to help support your conclusion about your response to this problem. And the only other thing I would say is that it's if you come up with your idea, you can agree with the brother, agree with the sister, or have your own idea. Just tell us why the other, why you went with your way and why the others weren't as fair. That's sort of a full understanding of your idea here. So what we're going to do is put you into small groups again, and you'll have some time a little bit while we're doing all of this organizing to get a little bit of a head start on the problem on your own. And then I'd like you to talk about your solution. And we have another Google Doc that's not a Google Doc, a Google slide deck that is just for this particular part of our talk together. And just to show you, you have a blank screen, and then the actual problem is in the notes section down here. So you can reread what I asked you to do, what the task is. We'll give you about 10, 15 minutes. We'll check in about 10, maybe give you a few more times just to get started what you're thinking about. Agree with the brother, agree with the sister, or do you have your own way and why? Okay, and try to see if you can come up with a representation. All right, I'll see you in about 15.
Was that the full time? It went that fast?
Yes, it was. Time flies.
So I know that folks didn't get a chance to finish up, and we're running out of time. Hopefully that's because you're enjoying everything that you're learning here. And you found that the task was interesting. So what I'd like to do is just call out a few people, volunteers, who would be willing to share just briefly share their solution and something that came up for you in terms of talking about the context of the problem, either a connection you might have made to, did, for example, anything come up with people in your own experience or someone else in your group's experience, that this was familiar, did it resonate? And how that might have impacted some of the decisions that you made. So is there a group that would be willing to just, and you can tell me which slide you have, that would be willing to talk really briefly, and I mean briefly, like a minute, about your solution, and then any insights that happened, any connections you made mathematically or context-wise. Who's excited to tell me, to share?
Group 4 could jump in.
Group 4, I'm gonna do that's this slide here.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'll just, with my 30 seconds, say I started to think math-wise, and we started to figure out the percentages of the worth of each of the earnings for each sibling, and then how that would relate. And we started to come down. I was coming down with the university professor's side of things, and then I got straightened out by
Me, I came down on the side of the brothers, and I believe that he should pay more. But I only think 50%, 69 was too high, because he also has higher expenses, like school loans that he could have, or he could have his own practice for all we know.
Okay. So did you agree with the brother, or you would come up with your own, a different grade to do it?
I would go.
The brother says that everyone should pay the same amount.
I would pay more. As the brother, I would pay more. I wouldn't divide it by 3. I would pay half, and then let the other 2 divide it up however they see fit. But I would pay half of it.
Okay. Another group. Did anybody wrestle with some of the things that you were with the problem? You were definitely going to go with the brother. You're definitely going with the sister. Or both those ideas were bad, and you had to come up with a new one.
So I'll go for group 3.
Group 3.
Click too many things, and we talked more than we wrote. So I'm just going to share.
Of course.
We said that the only information we thought about what is really possible for people, right? So we said that maybe the proposal that the sister provided was fair, because it was about 15% of everyone's monthly income. However, there are too many unknowns to see if it's actually fair in terms of doable. So we know that the sister who presented, that she can provide that amount because she's the only one who said it. Taking 15% of the brother, he didn't respond like, I can't do that. Like, we had him like, maybe he's paying child support. We don't know his circumstances. And the sister who wasn't there or didn't have a voice in this problem, we don't know what's possible and doable for her as well. So we really feel like that should be a conversation. We need to figure that out and see where they had it. And someone in the group shared that this is, a part of her life, having multiple siblings who have different needs and how they do ask her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I just want to, because we're running out of time, we have 10 minutes left, is that this is the kind of problem. I gave this problem, I taught this problem in a middle school. We were doing a proportional reasoning, a proportions unit, and we were having kids having a really tough time moving from additive thinking to multiplicative thinking. And so this is based on a true story, but we were able to create a task that helped kids to try to think about what it means to potentially think about the idea of paying something proportionally as a way of fairness, or giving a different idea of what a fair share might be versus dividing equally, as some of you had said that's oftentimes how we think of fair sharing. What does it mean to create things proportionally? And so I will say that when I did do this with young people, overwhelmingly, their first response was, we all agree with the brother. Everyone should pay equal amounts. All the kiddos said that. And then when I asked why, and asked for them to do that next step, which was to say, then how is the sister's idea not as fair? That's when we started pushing the mathematics. And so at that point, one of the children did actually create the representation of what it would be like symbolically, or from an equation standpoint, if we tried to mathematize what the brother was saying. And he recognized, the young man recognized that the youngest sister would pay half her paycheck for this particular activity. And that was a moment where all teachers at that moment just, loves where the aha thing happens. And the kid recognized that and said, well, that wouldn't be fair. And we asked why, and then he was able to say why the sister's approach was more fair. And he went around and convinced the rest of the class why the brother's approach was not fair. And those are the kinds of mathematical discussions we want to have in our classrooms. And this is something that the kids could resonate with and think deeply, mathematically and socially about what does it mean to be fair. So I invite you to use this activity with your students or with your faculty. I would say that there is a third through fifth grade version of this task, and I'm going to stop sharing for a moment because for some reason the chat button is in my way, and so I want to make sure that I can see what you're saying, but also get back into. Let me show you the grandfather, the abuelo's birthday version. This can be found on a website called Mathematical Modeling with Cultural and Community Contexts. And it's again the same, very similar scenario where 4 grandchildren are trying to buy Senora Aguirre's gift, and we have a Nana's birthday version. So they found a photo printer for $119.99, and they want to buy him the printer so he can print photos of his family. And then there are 4 grandchildren, and they each make a certain amount of money, except little Jaden, who's a first grader and has no weekly job, but saves $8 in her piggy bank. One sibling says that they should split the cost of the printer among them and each pay the same amount. Another sibling says that is not fair and they should each pay different amounts. What do you think? What is fair in the situation? And so you have the kids then think about what that means and help them come up with a plan to share the costs to buy the gift. And the numbers we use here are designed to sort of promote deeper thinking. So the Alex has a range. He learns between $15 and $20 each week from babysitting. And so that provides an extra layer of cognitive demand than if we had just given like 20 or 15. The kids can choose what number they want. And I have different examples of student work that you can go through at a later date that shows how young people ended up incorporating creating the plan that would end up buying the gift. Some kids thought about things from a proportional perspective and had the oldest child who makes the most pay the most. And it was often very interesting to see what kids did with Jaden, the first grader who has only $8 in the piggy bank. And some, like this particular group of children, made Jaden pay all of the amount in the piggy bank, while this group decided that Jaden was only going to pay tax and use $4 of the amount. And there's no tax in the problem. Like tax and savings was not in the problem, and kids use their own experiences from savings and tax, understanding of tax, to come up with a solution for this problem. And so it's something that I would invite you again to try with upper elementary kids. The website has a 3rd grade version and a more advanced 4th and 5th grade version. So given that we only have 4 minutes, I just want to, the part that I didn't, of course, get into was the connections to family and communities. But I would invite you to think about how do you communicate with family and communities about your vision. And one often used way that people do communicate with families is through their websites and through their newsletters, their classroom newsletters that they might send home. So in the book, we have various examples of newsletters and ways to design things that you should consider. And here's a newsletter that was a teacher gave out to her parents. And I just annotated it a bit for you in terms of this would be something that you would send out like in the beginning of the school year or a new quarter or however you want to do it. But just telling a little bit more about what your math vision is for kids, and giving families some things to think about and talk about with their children. So this has a letter, this has a definition of math, what is worthwhile math, and a connection to research. And on the back side, bunch of different family examples, bilingual internet resources, the fact that this teacher wanted to emphasize problem solving, and then what the math learning goals are for her particular class. So just thinking back, just in your, how do you communicate to families what's important to you around the math learning experience in your classrooms? And I just, take a look at the things that you normally give out to families and see what the message is. Is it always about what the curriculum is about, or when the next test is, or just informational? Or are you really trying to help families really understand the joy and beauty and the math strong adjectives that your descriptions that you used, to help them understand that that's your perspective and that's what you want for their children, because you are partners. Okay, so in the end, cultivating math strong students requires a lot of things: access to high quality content, curriculum that is both a mirror and a lens. And I say that a lot of people use mirror and windows, but I like mirror and lens. Kids should see themselves in the curriculum, and then they should also be able to use mathematics as a way to analyze the world around them. So that's why I use the analogy to a lens. It requires systemic and strength-based approaches to eradicating inequities, like getting tracking, just and equitable instruction, a focused attention on learning and not labeling, eliminating deficit discourses around children. So eliminating that high, low, advanced, medium, bubble kids, all those adjectives that people use to describe children need to be eliminated. Focus on what they're learning, focus on their strengths and their areas of growth. Strong relationships, students, families, and communities, and then listening to students, families, and communities. In what ways are you listening to the families that you're serving right now? And the last is unequivocal faith. So I'm going to give you a words of wisdom from 8th grade algebra math. These were kids who came to my math methods classes I did this over for 12 years. I had a group of 8th graders come from a local school and be volunteers in my math methods class. And I would always ask these young people to give advice to the new teachers who were going to be math teachers. So here's their advice to us, okay? Be strict and nice, be patient, tell personal stories, open up your life to kids, but don't bring your drama. Build relationships and trust with kids. Make math fun, engaging, and relevant. Include math conversations and group work. Connect math to real life beyond school. Keep it real, hands-on, real-world examples. Less worksheets. Have multiple ways to explain a math concept. Recognize students, let me see if this actually has something there. Nope. Recognize students have different strategies to solve problems. Don't force just one. Grade and test scores do not define us as math learners. Realize that we are individuals and learn things differently. Students want to learn. Ask questions. Our voices matter. We need to talk through ideas. Don't just point out things we did wrong. Focus on things we're doing well too. Make sure it's okay to make mistakes. So I think that's a good place to just give us a sense of how kids are feeling at the moment and how much they want to learn. Those are wisdoms by young people. And lastly, I'll close with Geneva Gay, who coined the term culturally responsive teaching. She's a professor emeritus at University of Washington. Culturally responsive teachers and leaders have unequivocal faith in the human dignity and intellectual capabilities of their students. So with that, I'll leave you. I hope that you got a sense of a couple of things that you can use and utilize in your journey to develop more equitable math teaching practices for math literacy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aguirre. You really gave us a lot of things to think about and a lot of great information to kind of carry forward. So for those of you, I just have one other thing that I want to show with you all, if I can share my screen really quick. For those of you that are interested in doing more work around this, we have a tri-county project that we're working on. So it's Oakland, Washtenaw, and Wayne County. So Dr. Jennifer Banks from Washtenaw, Eurisha Johnson from Oakland, as well as myself.
Oh my gosh, that is my niece.
Oh, awesome. We're working on a project. It's a tri-county project on culturally responsive mathematics teaching. And if you're interested in learning more about what we're going to be doing, please make sure you email me so I can forward that information to you. It's going to be a really great project, really focusing on culturally responsive mathematics and how we can really engage our students and really help our students become or let them see that mathematics in themselves and be able to see it in the world around them. So we're really excited and we're really trying to push this work forward. So if you're interested, shoot me an email and I'll make sure you get the information about this particular project. Thank you all so much for your time. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Thank you.
And spending your Monday afternoon with us. Thank you so much.